never far away.
Hello everybody and welcome to this Halloween special edition of Beyond the Veil. I'm Brett Rogers and as always I'm joined by Lee Wise.
Good evening.
Lord Lee Wise.
Thank
Dark
you for
Lord.
the full title.
Dark Lord Lee Wise on Halloween.
We ain't got time for all my titles and honours, Brett, I'm afraid.
Honest. So here we are. It's Halloween and this is always our favourite time of the year.
It is.
We always enjoy this time of the year when the leaves are turning orange and it's getting colder and it's getting darker and it's perfect time for the paranormal and the spooky shit. So, do you have any personal Halloween traditions you'll be indulging this year?
It's mainly, I always have to have a pumpkin, of course.
Of course.
Um,
I think that's a global
it is, and it's
tradition.
even more popular nowadays. But believe me, it's personal. From being a child, I insisted, and one year my mum and dad, when pumpkins were a massive thing, they literally went and got a turnip, and I think it took my dad a week or so to carve it out.
Because they're rock hard.
It's rock hard.
Yeah. I think my mum's got a pretty awesome picture of me and Kirk, which is my brother to the listeners, of us standing looking extremely terrified with our turnips. Either terrified because they're not pumpkins or terrified because we was in the spirit of Halloween, but I'm not really sure.
A bit of both, probably, especially if you had to carve them.
but no, broken fingers.
Other than that, no real traditions, but I do like to keep on top of Halloween films.
Of course.
That are based at Halloween. There's no other time of year you can watch them, really. I fully enjoy them.
Yeah, I think Halloween films or, well, horror movies in particular take on a different feeling at this time of year, don't they?
Yeah.
I think they really do. It's a bit hard to really get in the spirit of a really good horror movie when it's 10 o'clock at night and the sun's still out.
Yeah.
And I think when it's darker and it's dark early.
Especially certain movies. I'd said to you, didn't I, that I was going to wait to watch Nosferatu until this time of year. So
yeah, good shout.
I'll be doing that soon.
Yeah. Have you seen it?
Not yet. I've been saving it.
Really?
Yeah.
I just thought you meant you was before you watched it again. You've not actually.
No, I've never seen it.
Wow. Well, it was very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very good.
I'll be watching it soon.
Oh, yeah, I can't wait for you to watch that then. I genuinely thought you'd already seen it. I thought you went to cinema to see it.
No, I didn't get a chance.
Damn. Okay, yeah, you'll have to let me know then, because it was very good.
Uh-huh.
We thoroughly enjoyed it. Looking forward to his next one. What's the
Frankenstein.
No, aren't you doing
Someone's doing Frankenstein.
Aren't you doing like a werewolf one?
Oh, I don't know. That's my least favourite of all horror.
Yeah, but if anyone can let me have a look. I'm sure he's doing a werewolf one. What's Robert Eggers' next movie? Robert Eggers' next movie. Yeah, werewolf.
Yeah,
there we go. But if anyone can make it scary, he can make it scary, I reckon.
I suppose.
He has a vibe about him, doesn't he? A style.
Yeah.
I think I'll be watching Halloween as usual, which is kind of a given, really. But I do enjoy it. It's good.
Yeah.
It's one of my favourite movies. So.
Classic.
It is a classic. And you introduced me to that film.
Did I?
You did.
Always a ghoulish kid, you see.
Indeed. But you introduced me to Halloween, and it's been a favourite and a staple in my horror library ever since. So thank you for that. So anyway, so tonight with our Halloween special episode of Beyond the Veil, we are going to do something a little bit different, where we are normally here to share your paranormal encounters and to guide you as we try to uncover and learn what lies beyond. Tonight, to celebrate Halloween, we're going to share with you some spooky campfire style stories, but with a twist. Some of these stories are reportedly true, some are folklore, and some are urban legend. But either way, we are going to see if we can get to the truth behind these stories. After these, though, we then have a true Halloween story to share with you from a special guest on the show, which I can't wait for you to hear. So, with that, Lee, are you ready to begin?
I am ready.
Every legend starts with a witness. Every haunting leaves a trace, and somewhere between fact and fear lies the truth. Let's uncover it. Beyond the Veil. Story number 1. Robert the Doll. Our first story tells the tale of a doll. They say toys are meant to be played with, but in Key West, Florida, there's a doll that doesn't just sit quietly. It remembers you, and some say it never forgives. The story begins in the early 1900s with a boy named Robert Eugene Otto, who everyone called Gene. Gene was given a large handmade doll dressed in a sailor suit. The doll was unusual, almost the same size as the boy himself. Gene adored it, giving it the name Robert, and he took it everywhere. But before long, the family and neighbours began to whisper. Visitors swore they heard giggling and footsteps when Gene was not around. Toys in the house would be found in different places, and objects would go missing. Sometimes Gene's parents claimed to hear him upstairs talking to Robert, only to hear a different voice answering back. As Gene grew older, the bond never faded. He kept Robert with him, even as an adult. People noticed that when Gene was angry, he would sometimes say, "Robert did it." After Gene's death in 1974, Robert remained in the house, still in his sailor suit, until later caretakers donated him to the Fort East Martello Museum. But even behind glass, Robert's reputation grew darker. Staff and visitors claim the doll moves, his expression changes, and his gaze follows you across the room. The strangest part? Visitors who mocked Robert or took his photo without asking permission later wrote desperate letters back to the museum, letters begging for forgiveness. They described accidents, illness, and even death in the family. Today, Robert sits in his case, surrounded by letters of apology. So if you ever visit Key West, you can see him, but be careful. They say if you disrespect Robert the doll, you'll regret it. Creepy.
Very.
Creepy. So what is the truth behind this story? So, the Robert the Doll story centres on Robert Eugene Otto, who was an artist and something of an eccentric. The Otto family were a large family, and they were long associated with the doll, and they were also a very prominent family in the Key West area, and they had a quite a large home by all accounts. The doll's provenance is commonly tied to the early 1900s and to a German manufacturer called Steiff, which was purchased by Robert Otto's grandfather whilst visiting Germany in 1904. It was then gifted to the young Otto as a birthday gift, and it is believed the doll's sailor suit it wears was likely an outfit that Otto wore as a child, so it belonged to the boy himself. So the legend traces to the early 20th century, and it grew through local oral history, through tourist retellings, and as the internet grew into prominence, stories told over the World Wide Web and tourism coverage. But it sort of like acquired variants, and some emphasising a curse or vengeance, and others focus on alleged movement of, because of like visitors' misfortunes. So it seems like it was one of those. It's been one of those legends that sort of just formed itself,
Yeah.
And I think a bit like the Annabelle doll, where not that we like it I really like that, but people just have this. They see a doll. I don't know if you've seen the doll or not, but it is a funky looking doll.
Yeah, I've seen
Yeah,
that one.
it's. And if any of our listeners aren't aware of it, you should go and have a look online at the images of the real Robert the doll, because it is a funny looking thing. And it would be easy just to turn around and attach some sort of legend to it that it was cursed, because looking at it, you'd be like, yeah, it's cursed.
And dolls and inanimate objects, again, been the trope of many a film.
Yeah, of course.
Movie. You got the Annabelle doll, which I know was based on the Raggedy Ann one that the Warrens investigated. You got the Robert the Doll, and you have that doll. Remember the one we saw at the Paranormal Museum? Yes. Was it the Poltergeist Museum?
Yeah.
And we saw that one, and that has been on. Was it this morning?
Yeah.
And it started rocking in the chair.
Yeah, it's sort of like moving, didn't it? Yeah.
And I guess dolls and such things they pass into that uncanny feeling when you look at them. And as you say, it's probably very easy then to have legends attached to these dolls. But there's something remarkably creepy about it as well.
Yeah. I think a lot of the time it's because not even in a realistic sense, but they mimic us in appearance, don't they?
Yeah.
And because the idea of them being alive when they resemble us, but in a somewhat creepy way, the idea of them being alive is just terrifying, isn't it? You know, I mean, if you saw the real Robert the Doll and it got up and it started walking towards you, you'd cry, shit yourself, and then probably die.
Yeah.
You know, in that order. Or no particular order either, to be fair. So, yeah, it's definitely just tied to that whole thing of dolls just being creepy, I think.
Yeah.
And it's probably why it just grew into its own legend. So, it is unknown why or how the doll became linked to the paranormal, as there are no records of Otto reporting any paranormal activity connected to the doll. And when the Ottos died in the mid-1970s, Myrtle Reuter, who purchased the Otto home and all of the possessions therein, including Robert the Doll, never reported any paranormal activity related to the doll either, as far as I was able to, through my research anyway.
What's a little bit odd about this one, I think, is other infamous dolls. So the only ones I can think of other than Robert are the Annabelle doll and the one we saw. Can't remember what that doll's called.
I can't either.
And that's a very traditional, like Victorian pot doll, isn't it? But both the Annabelle doll and that one are just thought to be haunted because they've been seen moved. There's the story behind the Annabelle one of it being cursed. Whereas the Robert one is surrounded by these letters from various different people.
Yeah.
And it just makes it a bit more compelling because there's individual letters that somebody's been having such bad luck that's frightened them that they've attached to this doll for whatever reason. But it's not just one person.
Yeah.
It's several people, and they've gone to the trouble of writing a letter to a doll, which sounds pretty mad. But it's obviously scared them to that point.
Yeah.
That they've done that.
And I think although there will be a percentage of people that do feel like any misfortune that's befallen them is a result of seeing the doll or whatever, you've got to also have that skeptical / cynical mind on of like, well, it could just be pure coincidence, you know. And I think some people get sort of caught up in the fever pitch of it.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, well, you know, I saw all these letters and now I've had this bad luck. Oh, I best write a letter as well. And I think some people just also like to jump on the bandwagon a little bit with it.
True.
I'm not sort of like trying to play like, you know, good cop, bad cop, devil's advocate or whatever, but I'm not, you know, you watch, I'm probably going to end up getting fucking cursed now because I'm slagging him off. But
is the doll in the room with us?
Hey, he's right over there. But yeah, I just sort of think to myself, well, there might be something to it, but from what I was able to ascertain, that there's not really anything grounded in any truth, facts, or recordings that said that this doll was ever haunted until it got donated to this frigging museum. And I think it was only ever donated to the museum because it had some sort of historical significance. And then all of a sudden it's like, no, that doll's haunted.
But it's got a bit of a mysterious past. Like, nobody really knows a lot about it.
Well, I mean, it's a doll. I mean, it was made by a German manufacturer, and it was bought in Germany and given as a gift. I mean, we're surrounded by toys in this room.
So your theory is that one person's attributed the bad luck to this doll, and that's sort of caught on in the imaginations of others.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, I'm not completely ruling out the fact that there could be some truth to this, but I think when you look at it, it's a great story to tell as a campfire story because it's creepy. Yeah. As a story itself, but, we always said that for this show we would sort of break these stories down and try and get to the bottom of some of these. And although this episode's a little bit different, but I kind of just feel like with this one, I kind of feel like this is a legend that's been born after the fact. I think someone's just seen something and gone, that's kind of creepy. I can imagine that haunting my nightmares. And then someone else has shared that sentiment, and it's just sort of caught on. And then before you know it, it's just sort of snowballed out of control.
I think the litmus test for these things is, that's your theory. Would you go and
stick my middle finger up at him?
Annoy this doll, yeah.
Yeah, why not?
Would you?
Yeah, I think I would. Yeah, because I honestly, like...
I don't think I would. I don't wish to attract any bad luck. I feel like I have enough.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, because you kind of think to yourself, well, why tempt fate?
Yeah.
But I don't know. Just like we always said we wouldn't do a Ouija board, I kind of think to myself, well, bad luck happens anyway, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I not that I ever want it to happen. That don't make me think, oh well, bad luck happens anyway, so bring it on. I don't have that attitude about having unfortunate things happen to me. But I could go see the doll, bow at him, ask him if he wants a cup of tea, just to say on his good side. And something I could come home and still lose my job or something like that. Like that could still happen.
But what if you did that and you went and insulted the doll some way and then you did get bad luck? Would a piece of your mind think because of that bloody doll? Or would you just completely ignore it? Because I presume, after your comment about Ouija boards, we've since done many Ouija boards. And probably, in the time since we've done them, we've had some bad luck of some description. I certainly never put it down to doing a Ouija board, but that was because there's never been any suggestion that it was going to bring us bad luck. But would you, having insulted this apparently cursed doll, on receiving bad luck, would you then put it down to that, do you think?
Well, maybe I would, but that'd be really easy though, wouldn't it? It'd be really easy for me to do that. And it's one of those things that I don't suppose you'll ever really know unless you did it. But like, I just kind of feel like I don't think I'd be all that bothered. Maybe when I was face to face with the freaking thing, maybe I would feel different. And I know it sounds like I'm really backtracking now, but I'm just trying to think of all of the angles, and I can't. Part of me feels sitting right here, like I'm real fucking brave sat here, but thousands of miles away from him. I can say whatever I want, but like, it's like that classic thing when you get into a fight, I'll smash his teeth right out of his skull, and then you get face to face with the fucker, and you're like, oh yeah, I didn't say anything, but I don't know. I just kind of think like, I don't feel like there's enough in this to make me feel like I should or would be concerned.
Yeah.
I just don't. I just kind of feel like the more I've read into it, it just kind of feels like this is just something that's just someone has created.
I tend to agree, and I think it comes about, and these sort of stories come about because dolls, clowns, ventriloquist dummies are inherently creepy.
Yes.
Most people find at least one of those three things a little bit odd. Clown doll is the horror of horrors.
Yeah, yeah. It's the magic combination.
Yeah. So I think often these urban legends are rooted in truth, and that's why I think this is a good episode, and this is where the idea for this podcast came about, as we've already discussed, is that we enjoyed when we were away that time telling creepy tales, some of which will be urban legends, some of which will be true stories, some of which are a bit of both, and almost all urban legends and folklore is based on some element of truth, isn't it? So,
Yeah,
so there's still interesting stories. But I'm with you on this specific doll. I don't think there's anything too creepy. That one we saw at the Poltergeist Museum, that wasn't inherently, it's not reported to be cursed, so you didn't go and tiptoe around it.
Of which, by the way, I believe is called Charlie. Charlie the Haunted Doll.
What, at the Poltergeist Museum?
Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Oh. No, hang on a minute. Elizabeth.
Yeah, that's the one.
Elizabeth has earned her title as the world's most haunted doll. There we go. Yeah.
Oh, there's an interesting YouTube. My haunted doll attacked my husband, and that's the very one.
Yeah.
But that was the one that was it on This Morning?
Yes.
So and it did appear to be rocking in the chair. I thought that was pretty creepy. I think I saw it shortly after it happened.
Yeah, I remember it because it even looked like it had sort of turned its head a bit. Yeah, it was a bit weird that. Anyway, so that's that one. But yeah, if anyone wants to go and have a look at that, I to find that I just typed into Google haunted doll This Morning, and it probably. I hope no one's looking at my browser history, and yeah, so that's where you'll find it.
Okay.
So why is it that this story persists, and what is its cultural impact? Well, the doll's display at the Fort East Martello Museum turned Robert from a local oddity into a widely known folkloric figure. Visitors and some who have sent letters to the museum sending apologies and requests to be forgiven have been stating that they've been cursed after viewing the doll, and this, along with tourist guide retellings, have helped to keep that legend alive. It has become part of Key West tourist lore and has appeared on numerous paranormal lists and documentaries over the years. The tale of Robert the Doll has also been adapted, albeit loosely, into a horror movie franchise which spans 5 entries.
Ah, yeah.
I believe it's another one of those things, though, where the doll looks nothing like the actual fucking doll.
It doesn't.
Yeah, because, and just like Annabelle in the movies looks nothing like
no, not at all.
The Annabelle doll. So, yeah, if anyone wants to go check out those movies, go for it. I don't think I'll be bothering because I've heard they're terrible.
They are.
Excellent. You heard it here first, folks. Lee Wise Reviews.
Film critic.
Okay, so our second story, The Babysitter and the Man Upstairs. It's a story parents tell and teenagers whisper when the lights go out. The kind of story that starts off ordinary and ends in every babysitter's nightmare. It begins with a girl babysitting late at night. The children are asleep upstairs. The parents gone out for the evening. She settles in to watch TV when the phone rings. A man's voice, calm but strange. Have you checked the children? Confused, she hangs up. Probably just a prank call. But minutes later, the phone rings again. The same voice. Why haven't you checked the children? The girl's unsettled now. She locks the doors, pulls the curtains shut. She tries to distract herself, but the phone rings again. The same chilling question. Terrified, she calls the police. They tell her they'll trace the call if it happens again. So she waits. The silence is worse than the ringing. When the phone finally shrills, she answers, voice shaking, and the operator comes back on the line, urgent and panicked. Get out of the house. The calls are coming from inside the house. She drops the phone, runs for the door, and just as she does, she hears heavy footsteps above her, coming down the stairs. Some versions say she escaped. Others say she didn't, but the warning remains the same. Sometimes the threat isn't outside. It's already inside with you. I think I've heard this one when I was younger.
I've definitely heard this one.
Yeah.
Again, it's just almost a trope. Again,
I think it's like kind of like
the babysitter in peril.
Yeah.
So many horror movies use it.
And I kind of feel like it's that coming of age thing as well, isn't it?
It is a bit of a warning as well that if you're going to babysit, make sure you keep your eye on the kids.
Yeah. It's easy. They'll sleep and then I'll just get paid at the end of the night. Yeah. So
it's funny as well because whilst you were telling the story, I remembered a story that my dad told me, although I'm sure if I asked him, he wouldn't remember telling me this. 100% an urban legend. There would have been newspaper reports, which I've checked, and there isn't. But it involved both a babysitter and a Ouija board, but it always really freaked me out. And I think he probably told me it to stop me doing a Ouija board, in the home.
Yeah.
Because even the most, I think you realise, the most sceptical of people of the paranormal absolutely would not and do not want anybody to be using a Ouija board in their house.
Which is bizarre. We will do
it's
an
a
episode.
parents thing,
yeah,
isn't it?
we will do an episode on Ouija boards and the legends of Ouija boards, and we'd love to get some stories of people using them and your experiences of them, whether good, bad, or even if nothing actually happened. But I always find it fascinating, and I'll probably say this in that episode as well, but I always remember both my mum and even my grandma telling me, I didn't even know what a fucking Ouija board was, right? And they'd be like, never use a Ouija board. I'd be like, what is a Ouija board?
Good to see we've followed their advice.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, well, it took me 40 years, but we got there in the end.
Yeah.
But finally plucked up the courage to go against my parents' advice. 30 odd years later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just always kind of found it strange that there was just this early warning of
so worried about that. Yeah. It's strange.
Yeah.
So my dad's story was there was a babysitter who invited a friend round, and they ended up using a Ouija board in the house where they were babysitting, and they contacted somebody like General Custer from that period, and then later on the parents of the children came to the house. 2 girls were dead, but they'd been murdered with sort of Native American spears.
Yeah.
And like I say, quite obviously not a true story, but that frightened me a lot when I was young. And I must say, when I first did a Ouija board on one of these ghost hunt evenings we've been on, that story popped back into my head.
Was you worried you were going to get in touch with General Custer?
I thought General Custer was coming for me at last. But it just shows how it plays on your mind, these things, and it is, when you think about it, it's really odd that was the thing. Your parents were saying, don't go out and do drugs. It was like, do not under any circumstances do a Ouija board.
Yeah. Especially if you're babysitting.
Yeah, here's your lager.
Yeah, get that down, yeah. It's bizarre, isn't it? But the babysitter and the man upstairs legend became widespread in the 1960s, though it likely drew on earlier fears and a few real crime cases that the public and press sometimes linked to the tale. One frequently cited real-world influence is the unsolved 1950 murder of Janet Kreisman, a teenage babysitter. Janet, spelt with 2 T's, just to be edgy, was 13 years old when, instead of going to a party with friends, she chose to babysit one of the regular children she would watch, 3-year-old Gregory Romack, supposedly one of her favourite children to care for. Gregory was already asleep when Janet arrived, and the Romacks saw this to be an easy job for Janet, but just to be safe, a loaded shotgun was left by the front door. I'm sure she would have been able to handle that perfectly fine, just do you know how to use that? No, you'll be fine. That's the bad end, point it at them and you'll be all right. So
that was always going to end in disaster, really.
Well, of course it was. Shotgun in the house, Christ. Only in America.
Yeah.
So at around 10:35 in the evening, Deputy McGowan received a call that would make anybody's blood run cold. The sound of a girl screaming bloody murder, pleading, "Come quick." Before any exchange of words, the line was cut dead. And you have to remember, this was the 1950s at the time. It was the evening, so there was no switchboard available to trace the call. So all that could be done was to hope that the girl would call back, which she sadly never did. At roughly 1:30 in the morning, where were they until this time in the 1950s, might I add? The Romacs returned to a horrifying scene. The door unlocked. They stepped inside to find Janet Kreisman beaten, raped, and strangled to death, just 3 days away from turning 14 years old. So it was largely considered an acquaintance of Ed Romack. Robert Mueller was the culprit for the murder. He was at the same event as the Romacks that evening, but he excused himself and was not seen or accounted for by others in attendance for a couple of hours. Mueller became a suspect and was of course brought in for questioning. However, for one reason or another, the case was botched and Mueller walked away from interrogation and custody with no charges brought against him, and as such the case remains unsolved. I think they suspected him, if I remember rightly from my research, was he was suspected because of that, the fact that he disappeared in the evening, but he was also linked to having a bit of a history of, let's just say, unsettling behaviour around females, and he'd had numerous reports brought against him in the past. So later retellings of the tale folded that case into the legend's elements, but it must be stated that direct factual links are not fully proven, and it is only theorised that the unsolved murder of Janet Kreisman has been influential on the tale. So wherever the truth lies, folklorists and those who still tell the tale today can note the legend's adaptability. It's a cautionary, suspense-filled story that fits modern communication tech such as phones and call tracing, and it preys on the fear of adolescents taking on larger responsibilities and the danger that comes with them.
Yeah.
So, in terms of its longevity and the numerous variants of how this tale has changed, it almost has that Chinese whisper effect that someone will tell it and they'll add a little bit to it and things like that. But the basic structure, the babysitter receives a call that turns out to be from inside the house. It does have many variants where some versions the babysitter survives, in others she is murdered. Toned down versions, the intruder's a prank by a sibling. I think it is also the fact that the story is so adaptable. It's managed to keep the legend of it, if you will, the story alive across so many generations.
I think the real element as well is that thing of getting more responsibility, and it is quite scary. Even I've got vague memories of babysitting when I was young, or joining.
Yeah,
probably a girl babysitting, and you suddenly do feel a bit like you're the adult in the house, which you essentially are, the guardian anyway. Yes. And you don't want anything to go wrong. It would take a special significance if a strange person knocks on the door than if you were just at home with your own parents or something like that.
Exactly.
So I mean, that's it. It's another good category for listener stories. If you've had any weird, unsettling experiences, don't have to be paranormal, just creepy experiences, we'd love to hear about those.
Agreed. But I think you're right. What you said there, because me and Kirk would look after our cousins, and Lindsay and Gary, and there's 2 years between all of us. So, but when me and Kirk had got to a certain age, it was sort of seen that we were old enough to look after Lindsay and Gary. Yeah. So then my mum and my auntie would go out together, and then we were responsible for Lindsay and Gary, and we just fucked about all night. Yeah. But when I look back at it now, we just saw it as, well, we've got free reign in the house, we can do whatever we want. But I must admit, when I look back at it now, if something had happened, like someone had knocked at the door or something, I don't know what we would have done. And
we didn't have mobile phones and so on.
No, we didn't.
It'd take you 3 hours to ring the police with that old...
yeah, with the dial, yeah. But I think we were lucky in the sense that because we were babysitting our cousins, who we saw a lot of them, obviously very fond of, etc. But that we sort of distracted ourselves from that.
Yeah.
I think if that had just been a couple of other kids who we sent to bed early, but obviously we didn't do that because we were too busy messing around. But if they were supposed to have a bedtime and we were supposed to put them to bed, I think that would have been scarier.
Yeah.
Because it would have been like, oh yeah, we're actually looking after two
Exactly.
kids here.
Exactly.
You know? But I do think back to that sometimes, and I'm like, if anything had happened, what would we have done? You know, I'd have been terrified, and I know Kirk would have.
Yeah, and I think that's partly where these stories arise, is that it is just that fear of responsibility. When you're already fairly vulnerable yourself,
yes,
at that age, younger age. I think it comes from that, but it also comes from, I think a lot of people do have creepy experiences when babysitting. I can't remember the full details, but I remember hearing somebody babysitting, just got the kids up to bed, came down, and there was some glass patio doors at the back, and there was just somebody stood.
Oh no!
Just staring through, not moving, didn't run off when she looked. I can't remember much more detail than that, but when I was told that story, I was like, ooh, that's awful.
Yeah, I'd have passed out.
And so yeah, edit out this request if you don't want to. But one of the creepiest stories I've heard about babysitting, which is not paranormal, is yours with the.
Oh my!
What about telling that one?
Sweet Jesus! Yes, you know what? Actually, I will tell that story.
This isn't paranormal, is it? Really?
It's not. Well, it's not. But initially, our thoughts were that it was.
It's
so
worse.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, oh my sweet Jesus! Right, okay, yeah. So, me and my wife Charlotte were babysitting for a friend of ours, and she was only young. She must have been 2, 3, maybe. I can't really remember. It was a long while ago now. But she old enough that she was sleeping in a cot, you know. So she wasn't sleeping in a bed yet. So she was probably 2, 3, something like that. So she was already in bed when we got there, and we had been assured that she would likely just sleep through and she'd be fine. They weren't going to be out till late. They weren't going to be out late. They'd be back early enough. And we literally just settled in. Me and Charlotte, we just settled in just to watch a film, and we were just watching something, and it hadn't been all that long, and then all of a sudden we heard the girl crying. So we went upstairs to see if she was all right, and she just seemed to really like unconsolable. Like, you know, it wasn't a case of like she just needed like turning over or anything like that. She was really, really upset. So, and we could see in the dark she had something on her. So I popped the lamp on, and she had blood on her face, and it was on her hands. It was all over her a baby grow type thing, like the onesie type thing that they wear. I don't know. As you probably guessed, I don't have kids, so I don't know what these things are called. So anyway, there's blood all over that, and we're like, where the frick has all this blood come from? So we get her out of the cot and we take her downstairs and we get the baby wipes and we start cleaning her up and get all the blood off her, and we change her. And as I'm getting it off her hands and I'm wiping her hands off with this baby wipe, I noticed that she had this like cut on her finger. I was like, that's a lot of blood for just a small cut like that. But it was kind of deep. You know, it was kind of deep, but it just seemed like there was a lot of blood because, you know, I mean, baby's hands are tiny. I know that doesn't change the amount of blood they have in them, but still, like it was just freaky. It just didn't seem right. So,
I mean, a baby covered in blood's just never a good sign, is it? Not something you want to see.
Yeah, it looked like an offering.
Yeah,
like something awful. So we knew we couldn't put her back to bed while she was like that, and we tried to like settle her because, you know, she was clearly woken up in shock, and probably in pain, and she was also probably confused that she'd woken up and mum and dad weren't there because she was asleep when they left.
Yeah.
So we're trying to console her, and, you know, we ended up contacting our friend, and we were like, look, I'm not really sure she's going to calm down, to be honest with you. We've really been trying. We've put her films on that she likes, and she sort of starts to calm down, but then she gets upset. I think she actually just needs a mum and dad. So anyway, that kind of was that. But he was at a party which was out of town, and it was going to be a good sort of 45 minutes or so to an hour before he could get home. He didn't drive, so he had to wait for a taxi. So it was going to be a good hour, yeah. And then all of a sudden, we just heard this bang come from upstairs. And I was just like, what the hell was that? So I got to the bottom of the stairs and I just had this feeling that something was up there. And I was just like, hello? And then all of a sudden, I had another bang. Almost as like it was if it was responding to me. And I was just like, and I just looked at Charlotte and I was like, what the fuck is up? What is that? You know, what is that? And I must admit, I didn't want to go upstairs. And I just thought, whatever it is, I'm not dealing with it. Like, the most important thing is that what was most precious was downstairs. And that was the baby. So she was downstairs, so we're good. You know, everything else, that's not my problem. So, but then all of a sudden we had a bit of time had passed and we had another bang. And I was like, I'm going to have to go and have a look and see what's upstairs. I also did need the bathroom, but I was kind of putting off going because I was scared. So anyway, I go upstairs and I have a look in the rooms. I can't see anything. Everything seems normal. Nothing's out of place. I went into the bathroom and as I pushed the door open, it's like it hit something. And I was like, oh shit, something's in here. So I popped the light on and I sort of put my head around and I couldn't see anything. And I pushed the door again and it opened fine. Everything was fine. So I was like, that's really strange. But I did notice there was like towels and a dressing gown hung up on the back of the door. And I did wonder that as I had pushed it, maybe like it had moved the towels and the weight of those had pushed back against the door. And I was just like, okay, well, you know, nothing, just me. I'm just hypersensitive to everything at the minute because I think a demon's trying to get in the baby. So I just sort of ignored that and I went to the toilet and did my business and went back downstairs as quickly as I could. And then that was it. And then my friend came back and we apologised profusely because we didn't really know how to fix the problem. And he was like, look, don't worry about it, blah, blah, blah. And off we went. Turns out the next day that when they'd gone into the baby's room, they found a rat trying to get into the cot. So it turns out what had actually happened is that the rat had got into the cot and had bitten the baby, presumably seeing her as food. And yeah, that was pretty gross. So obviously they took the baby straight to the hospital and checked her over and she was fine and gave some injections just to be sure. And she's, you know, this was years ago and trust me, she is absolutely fine and dandy. She's cool, no problems. She's not mutated into some sort of rat creature and called herself Rat Person and become a superhero.
Splinter, she's called.
Splinter, yeah. That's an obvious one. How did I not think of that? Yeah. So yeah, but honestly, that was absolutely terrifying, and I had both me and Charlotte genuinely believed that something paranormal was going on, but it just turned out it was a rat. And they obviously had to kind of move his wife and the baby out while they got an exterminator to come and sort out the house. But they lived near some railway lines, and the house next door was abandoned. So that had attracted the rats, and then they'd managed to find a way in to his house, and there was all sorts of work that needed to be done to stop it. And they have sorted it, and nothing's ever happened ever since. But I'll never forget when you first told me the story. You know, when it happened, and that just one of the worst stories I've heard. Especially the thought that you felt you were being watched. So I always have the image of this bloody rat watching you. Yeah, and that was exactly it. I mean,
and then maybe it was behind the door.
I think it was behind the door. So I think what had happened is that it had gone into that room because it was dark, and it was just scurrying around up there trying to find different places, probably to get back out. And I think as I had opened the door, I'd hit it.
Yeah.
and it had gone further into the corner behind the door. So as I had swung the door open that little bit more, it was just sat in that corner. But I seem to remember I looked behind the door and I didn't see anything, but maybe I wasn't looking for a rat, I was looking for a person. So I don't think I looked at the floor.
No.
I think I just sort of like generally looked behind the door.
And you don't know, it might have been that might have been the route they were coming into the house. It might have gone back out.
Yeah.
You don't know.
And it turns out that the banging we'd heard is that it was actually in their bedroom. It must have been in their bedroom because some things had been knocked off the windowsill. So it had been on the windowsill, running along the windowsill, and it had knocked some things over.
Oh, God.
How fucking big was this
It must have
rat?
been quite big.
Yeah. Especially to be sort of challenging to eat a child.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
It is, it's awful. But that was a story that reminded me of babysitting. Yeah.
Not quite beyond the veil, maybe beyond the rail.
Ah, very good.
Oh, this is where listeners stop listening, isn't it? Yeah. Everyone's just turned off.
Edit that bit out.
Yeah, I'll edit that bit out. So, the whole story of the babysitter and the caller, it's directly, it has directly inspired or influenced multiple horror films over the years. Perhaps most famously, When a Stranger Calls, which dramatises the premise, but before that also Black Christmas. It uses similar intruder on the phone type dread, and the tale's core image, the phone call that shouldn't exist. It has become a staple of cinematic suspense.
It has.
So, our third story, The Hook. It was supposed to be a romantic evening. A young couple parks the car on a quiet lover's lane, the kind of secluded place teenagers go when they don't want to be found. The radio hums softly when suddenly an announcer breaks in. There's been an escape. A dangerous man has fled the local asylum. He's described as tall, deranged, and most chilling of all, he has a steel hook in place of his right hand. The girl stiffens. She wants to leave, but the boy laughs it off, tries to calm her. Don't worry, we're safe. Then, scratch. A faint scraping sound across the car door. She freezes. Did you hear that? He shakes his head, but she insists. The sound comes again, metal against metal, slow and deliberate. Suddenly, the night doesn't feel so private anymore. Panicking, she begs him to take her home. Reluctantly, he agrees. Tires screech as they tear away from the darkened road. When they finally arrive at her house, she rushes out of the car, and that's when she sees it. Hanging from the passenger side door handle, a bloodied steel hook. The story changes with every retelling. Sometimes the couple is attacked, sometimes they escape, but the warning is always there. Be careful where you park after dark, because you never know who might be waiting just outside. First of all, prisoners can't even have fucking shoelaces. Why has this one got a hook?
Oh, it's his limb.
Yeah, but it's detachable. What? No.
I don't think you can go taking people's prosthesis just because they're in prison.
It's not a prosthesis, it's a hook. People aren't even allowed bedding in case they hang themselves. It's ridiculous. So
again, I think you've touched on the meaning of these stories, which is again, young people fornicating, shouldn't be doing that, and disgusting. And the parking down the lovers lane and all of that. Yeah. And again, they're inherently creepy places.
Yeah, because they're secluded and you don't really know
for
the
their
types
purpose.
Of
It's dark usually,
seedy.
Country roads. So I guess they're sort of scary places from the beginning. And again, it's just the thought, you're vulnerable, aren't you, when you're getting down to it. Yeah. And then, if somebody suddenly appeared trying to get into the car or knocking on the window or whatever, it'd be awful, terrifying.
Yeah, it would.
Completely ruin the moment.
Yeah, which is obviously the worst part. But yeah, it's just, you're right. I mean, these places are always in very remote places. So I've heard anyway.
So I read.
Yeah, and they're usually dark and out of the way, and they
Yeah.
do get a lot of traffic down them. So I think it's also that thing of like you're you are definitely at the mercy of whatever's going to come out of the dark, and you're usually so far away from anyone to help you. I mean, even if you called someone with modern day tech, having mobile phones and everything, how quickly could someone get to you? You know,
Yeah.
Because again, they're usually in such remote places.
That's it.
But folklorists trace the Hook legend back to at least the 1950s in the US, with wider circulation by the late 1950s and 60s. The story was widely retold in newspapers, advice columns, and oral tradition, as one of the first notable print appearances was a 1960 reprint in the Dear Abby column. The tale functions as a morality and cautionary story. Don't ignore warnings and heed social rules. Don't park where you shouldn't, for example. Folklorists have also read symbolic meanings into the hook, including psychoanalytical readings where the hook is treated as a symbol of sexual danger or castration anxiety. Definitely not what I read into it, but there you go. There are numerous versions. Sometimes the couple is injured, sometimes they get away, sometimes the hook is found on the car, and sometimes it's carved into the seat. But the hook legend entered popular culture through reprints, horror anthologies, and later cinema and television that used the Lover's Lane terror as a trope. It's been cited as a blueprint for teen morality stories in horror, and has thematic connections to later slasher motifs. Perhaps one of the most obvious of the influences on cinema will be that of the killer, and loosely the story of the horror movie I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Indeed.
So,
Although that's not a prosthetic hook, it's a fisherman's
I did say
gripped
loosely.
hook.
Indeed, you are correct, but I did say loosely. So, yeah, it was not a bad film for its time.
Oh, I always liked it. I haven't seen the remake yet.
No, and I kind of feel like I don't want to
Again,
either.
pretty poor reviews, to be honest.
Yeah, I kind of feel like they are jumping on that whole thing of trying to bring back those slasher films,
Yeah.
and like breathe new life into them, like Halloween, Scream.
And I guess in itself as well, I Knew What We Did Last Summer as a kind of a morality tale. In it, they run someone over. It's a hit and run.
Yeah.
And then the person
they
gets revenge.
a vow of silence and around it and secrecy, and yeah, it comes back to bite him in the arse. So our fourth and final story before we introduce our special guest, the Hairy Hands of Dartmoor.
Goodness me.
There's a lonely stretch of road on Dartmoor in Devon, England, a bleak windswept moor, its lanes twisting through stone walls and shadowy trees. By day it looks like nothing more than a quiet country road, but by night drivers say something else lurks here. Not a ghostly figure by the roadside, but a pair of disembodied hairy hands that claw at your steering wheel and try to drive you off the road. This is the story of the Hairy Hands of Dartmoor. Reports surfaced in the early 1900s. One of the most chilling tales comes from the 1920s when a motorcyclist was riding along the B3212 near Portsbridge with his young daughter as a passenger. Without warning, the bike veered violently off the road. Witnesses claimed the rider had cried out that the hands are grabbing at me just before the crash. He was killed instantly. His daughter survived and told the world what her father had seen. Other motorists soon added their accounts. A traveller on a motorbike one night claimed he saw two hairy, bristled hands appear on his handlebars, trying to wrench them away. He fought back with every ounce of strength, and finally the hands vanished. It wasn't just motorcyclists. Drivers of cars felt their wheels twist as though some unseen force had grabbed the steering column. Campers parked along the road told of scratching at caravan doors and windows late at night, as if something was trying to get in. One woman said she awoke to see rough, animal-like hands clawing at the window latch, only to disappear when she cried out loud. Even those on foot went safe. Walkers told of being shoved by invisible hands from behind, tumbling into the ditch or stumbling forward, only to turn and find the road empty. For locals, the warning became clear. If you valued your life, avoid driving on that road after dark. So, there are more recent encounters. The story doesn't end in the past. Even in modern times, the hairy hands are said to haunt Dartmoor. In 2008, a driver named Michael Anthony reported seeing a pair of hairy paws appear over his hand as he drove along the B3212. He described them as clutching at the wheel before vanishing suddenly. Local folklore websites and paranormal groups note that sporadic reports continue into the 2000s with drivers feeling an unnatural tug on their vehicles. A sudden swerve they can't explain. Though these newer stories aren't as well documented as the older ones, with vague details of who the persons involved are, and they usually start with "locals say a driver," or words to that effect. Although they don't add any credibility to the stories, they do just add to the legend's eerie staying power. So, what is going on here? Well, the earliest reports date back to 1910 to 1921 with the fatal motorcycle crash, which obviously cemented the legend. The consistency always seems to be, which is never actually, this is the thing that's never actually changed, and you usually get that with legends, is that sometimes people say that they've seen something a little bit different or whatever, but the one thing that does seem to be consistent, no one's ever said that they've seen a body or a creature or anything. It's always just these hands. So just these disembodied hands, hairy and strong, grabbing at wheels or handlebars. Sometimes it's just like they almost like they just feel them instead, and they can just feel the tug. So they can't see them, but it's like they can feel these like hairy hands on them and the pull of them. So skeptics and those looking for a logical explanation point to the road itself, because the B3212 had a steep camber and it was quite narrow with low walls, making it treacherous for early motorists and motorcyclists, especially at night or in the mist. Some argue these accidents were simple driver error, and they were made more frightening by the isolation of the moors. But, despite the rational explanations, the legend has become a staple of Devon folklore. Paranormal tours speak of it, guidebooks warn of it. The hairy hands are cited in collections of British hauntings, and the story has been known to feature in ghost stories on television and radio. But I think what makes the hairy hands so terrifying isn't just the imagery of the disembodied claws. I think it's the universal fear that it plays on. We've all felt that moment of panic when a vehicle slides, whether you be the passenger or the driver. And I think it's, when that wheel sort of pulls unexpectedly, and that fear of losing control. I think the idea that something like that wouldn't be a mechanical issue and it's not human error, but something else, and that thing is deliberate, something unseen reaching out to sort of seize your fate, that's what makes the hairy hands truly scary, and I think it's what helps it endure. But if you ever find yourself driving across Dartmoor after nightfall, just ensure you keep both hands firmly on the wheel, because on that lonely stretch of road, someone else might be reaching out for it too.
Have you ever been to Dartmoor?
Yep.
It's an extremely eerie place.
Is it?
Really is eerie. Yeah, he just passing through.
I should ask my dad, actually. He's probably been.
Yeah, he would have been, I'm sure. What's weird about that one is it's so weird as to give it credibility. Like, it's not, there was a ghost of a hitchhiker in the road that I had to swerve to avoid.
Which is the sort of like cliched story that people tell.
But actually, these disembodied, hairy hands, someone described them as paws, almost like animalistic,
like
gorilla or bear. Or are they just really hairy human hands? It's just a really odd...
It's a really weird one, isn't it?
Really odd thing that for more than one person to report. And because it's almost so odd that it gives it more credibility. I
think so. I think, of the stories that I've read, that's why I saved that one till last, because that one really stayed with me when I was looking for these types of stories, because, as you said, it's so weird. It's kind of so weird that it kind of feels like it's probably the one out of all of them that's the most true. and has the most. It has the most sort of feeling, to it that would make it feel like it's true.
Yeah.
Because.
And I would call the other two stories urban legend.
Yeah, 100%.
And I would call this folklore. I would go more along the folklore.
This is definitely folklore
route. I'm not saying that gives any one type of story any more or less credibility, but just the complete strangeness of this one.
I think if you wanted to tell a story designed just to scare people, anyone could come up with something more terrifying than just a pair of hairy hands.
Yeah.
You'd say, there was.
It's almost comical at first.
Yeah.
These disembodied hands grabbing at you.
Just a couple of hands just floating around, But instead, like, you could have just said, oh, well, there was this giant hairy creature with bright red eyes that glowed, and it had these massive freaking hands that tried to yank me off my bike. You could have said that, but instead, just a couple of weird floating hands. Yeah. It's just bizarre.
It is just very strange.
But you'd almost feel ridiculous telling the story, wouldn't you? You just
the great thing is about all of these types of stories, and this is why they're fun. And I guess if they're pure fiction, this is what they're designed to do, is to make you think. And obviously tonight, when I leave here, I'll be going home on my motorbike.
Mm-hmm.
If I was riding through Dartmoor, it would certainly be crossing my mind about hairy hands trying to grab at the
I think
the bike.
That's when I researched, I just had a look what that road was like and everything, and I can get that what skeptics have said about like that road, the fact that it has the camber on it and everything, and it's like.
But again, would you choose hairy hands?
Exactly.
Pushing you off the road.
Exactly. So and that's the bit that I was literally just coming to that. It's like I can see what the skeptics are saying, because I can think of a couple of roads. One in particular comes to mind right now that I always feel the car slide on every time without fail.
Yeah.
And never for a second have I thought that, I've got a couple of I've got a ghost or a ghoul trying to steer me off the road. But if I wanted to tell that story, if I thought to myself, well, it happens every time I'm on that road, and I could say like something was trying to run me off the road and kill me, I think I could come up with something better than a pair of hairy hands.
He's really strange.
He's really strange. But and that's why for me, I was like, there's something about that. And although like there are stories, the stories are actually quite spread out as well. Sometimes by like a good sort of, certainly the ones that have been recorded. From the best I can tell, it seems like these stories are spread out over decades. Before you actually get to another one that's been recorded as like an actual, like, okay, we've got some details here of a person, of an incident, where we've got some real rather than just that usual thing of like, oh, well, I heard so and so that this guy was on that road and he nearly died. Yeah, but who? Have you got any names or anything? Oh no, it was just this guy who was passing through. How do you know then? It's like all the other stories are just so hairy-fairy that like there's just no substance to them that gives them any kind of credibility at all, that they could be recorded as actual accounts of the hairy hands. But the ones that have actually been recorded, they're quite spread out. And I think usually with paranormal activity, they usually are spread out.
Yeah.
They don't happen all the time. If they did, we'd have more evidence of whether or not it was real or not. Yeah. But yeah, I thought that one was a really interesting one. It's why I left it till last on that side of things. So yeah, I like that one. So anyway, our final story comes from a guest on the show. So I said we had a special guest to share a final story with us, which is true, and I'm going to introduce that special guest now. So, Dr. Wise, come on down. So, Lee, this is you now. So, you have a story of some events which happened to you at a previous house you lived at, and where you and your family live at, in fact, and some stuff happened to you, didn't it? But I think what makes it so good for an episode, for the episode tonight, to share it tonight, is because am I right that it actually happened on Halloween?
No. No, it didn't happen on Halloween.
I thought it happened on Halloween.
No.
Well, it's a good story, anyway.
Part of the strange neighbour thing happened on Halloween.
Yeah, that bit
obviously.
Happened. Yeah.
And that neighbour was part of the overall story. It was actually in summer. You know, again, we were talking earlier about how this time of year is a bit more creepy, and
Yes.
and you know, watching a horror movie doesn't hit the same in nice sunny weather or light nights or all the rest of it. Whereas this almost seemed worse because it was the summer months, where
when everything should be nice.
Things are a bit nicer. So we'd only lived in the house about a month or two. So first house that me and my partner had moved into, and with a little girl who was now 9. So she will have been round about 6 at the time. Quite a big house. It didn't have a whole lot of history. It was built in the 1980s, so it wasn't an old house by any means. Nothing at all inherently creepy about the house. And, you know, very strangely, in large part, we ended up moving out because of things that creeped my partner out so much. That was a large part of us moving out of that house. So we'd been in the house about a month or so, and gone to bed as normal. And although it's the horror trope, it was round about 3 a.m. A little girl started screaming, absolutely blood-curdling, the sort of thing that makes you terrified. I was almost frozen on the spot in bed.
I want to know what to do.
And Kirsty, my partner, went running through, and our little one was saying, it appeared like a nightmare, which may well have been. So our little one was screaming. She was saying that there was rats coming out of the walls. She was absolutely terrified. Kirsty pretty quickly got her settled down, back to sleep. Kirsty came back to bed, but there was just some energy in the house that wasn't right then, and I absolutely, I could sleep through almost anything. I couldn't go back to sleep. I just could not get back to sleep. I felt so freaked out. I went to toilet. When you look out of the window from the bathroom, it looks out onto a patch of grass with a few trees, and beyond our front garden. And I just got this awful, I have no idea even why I thought of it. Not suggesting it was paranormal. It was probably just how charged the night was with the energy. But I just thought, God, imagine if there was a figure just looking up at me. And what if that figure just started doing a little dance? And it sounds almost funny, but it freaked me out so much. I didn't bother going back to bed, and I actually just sat up and started typing my horror novel that I'm currently working on. And it came from that night. So it was horrible, really horrible. Don't know what caused it. It seemed like it was something more than just a little girl having a nightmare. And it's hard to put across why it felt like that, but there was something off, seriously off about the energy in the house. A place that had never been remotely creepy in any way before that. Then what made it stranger was Kirsty was talking to our neighbours. Now, the area that we lived in, as you know, Brett, it was pretty posh area, pretty wealthy area. And
I don't know why you was there.
Oh no, it didn't last long. And our neighbour, so to speak, lived in a huge house that was well detached from ours, and they also had a little girl of a similar age. And when Kirsty told them about what had happened in the night, the lady said, "Oh, that's really weird. Our little one woke up at the same time, screaming, and was completely unconsolable." And I found that so strange.
That
There's
is
absolutely no way she was woken by ours, or vice versa, because you could have screamed at the top of your lungs from our house and you wouldn't have heard it from theirs, and vice versa. The next really scary thing, I think, was we also had a neighbour who was, our house was semi-detached, so the neighbour who was attached to us was attached to our little one's bedroom. And she'd asked Kirsty the next day, "Oh, I hope everything was all right last night. I almost came round because your little one was screaming for about 3 hours." And that just didn't happen. And I thought that was really creepy.
Yeah. 3 hours.
And although pretty much all the neighbours were lovely around there, I always did get a weird, almost Rosemary's Baby vibe. It was almost like a bit cultish.
Yeah.
No evidence at all for that, but that's how it felt sometimes. And the neighbour attached to us was, she may have just been very sort of spiritual or whatever. She was quite sort of witchy, by her own admission. And then one Halloween, we'd taken our little one trick or treating just around the local area, and we knocked on this neighbour's door, and I was stood a bit back, so I didn't hear exactly what was said. And as we left, Kirsty said to me, "Oh, she said she's having a salmon feast. I wonder what salmon's got to do with Halloween." And I realised she means salmon, or as we've discussed earlier, it's pronounced in various different ways apparently. I always thought it was salmon, which is the old Irish word for Halloween, basically. So this lady had said she was having this feast for salmon, and although I'd heard the word before, I didn't know a whole lot about it, so I kind of looked it up when I got home. And it said that often on salmon night, witches would have gatherings and so on. So I was a bit like bemused by that, being what the neighbour had said. And then I went out into the back garden. I can't remember if I sent you a video even, Brett, but I went out into the back garden.
Yes.
And there was next door had a big sort of fire going.
Yeah,
but there was weird like red lighting and
yeah, because the video you sent was just you looking at your hedge.
Yeah,
because it was quite tall, wasn't it? And you could just sort of see the lights and stuff over the
and there was all
top.
chanting and
they were all like laughing and
yeah, really weird.
I forgot about that. Oh gosh, I still had that.
So that added to those creepy vibes. So then, really, final straw in terms of the paranormal was we had at the back of our house we had a largish back garden, and then there was a detached garage. And I'd never had any particular worries about the garage. Sometimes when I was on call and going out in the middle of the night, I'd ride off on my motorbike, and I'd sometimes get that feeling you sometimes get that you're almost being watched. And I would sort of check my mirrors to see if there was anyone watching from behind me, and there never was. But other than that, nothing. Didn't find anything weird.
And I think like at that time of night, going out in the dark when it's eerily quiet, you're always going to naturally feel a little bit like that anyway.
Yeah, a bit.
Especially because it was quite not remote-ish, but you lived in a very quiet area, didn't you? You know, I mean, you didn't really get any through traffic, did you?
No, there's plenty of houses around, but it wasn't a busy area by any means.
You don't really cut through it, do you?
No. And then, as time went on, my partner Kirsty was getting the Christmas decorations out. I was out celebrating one of our friends' birthdays. And she just got this absolutely overwhelming sense of being sad, like depressed, nearly burst into tears. I think she perhaps did. Really didn't feel good at all, and it had come out of nowhere. We didn't think a whole lot of it at the time. And then at that time, we had an electric car, and the charger was plugged into the garage, and then it would go under the garage, which had an electric door, and be plugged into the car. And a couple of times the car just hadn't charged, and this started to get more frequent. And then we just thought, it's probably when the garage doors closed. It's just unplug the charger somehow. But then when you looked, the actual charger had been fully unplugged, and it was just near impossible. I tried so many times to do that. And Casey ended up speaking to one of the neighbours because they had some sort of CCTV that covered actually our garage. So she wanted to see, is the garage being opened? I mean, I don't know why she thought somebody was coming in just specifically to unplug the car, but it was making her feel freaked out.
Well, I think at that point you just want to know who's doing it and why.
Yeah.
You know, like, is it just kids trying to mess with my head?
Yeah.
You know, it was a bit like when I lived in town that time and my frigging wing mirror kept getting whacked off.
Yeah.
You know, and I'd go out in the morning and the wing mirror was hanging off, and I'm just like, oh, for God's sake, you know. And then I ended up setting up that camera to try and just figure out who was doing it, you know, because I thought, well, I ain't going to pay to replace it. I'm just going to keep taping it up until I find out who it is, why do they keep doing it, and eventually, if I keep taping it up so many times, will they just stop? Because if they do, then I'll fix it. But back to the point, I think that's the thing. You just want to see them do it. You just want to know that someone is purposefully targeting it. It's not just a random thing.
And I think she just wanted to see, because you couldn't see a whole lot. You couldn't see like the full garage, but you'd be able to see if the door was lifted. Yeah. Anyway, there was nothing really there. But while she was talking to the neighbour's partner looked at her and said, I think you should tell her. And it transpired that a person who'd lived there before us, so the garage building had sort of beams and rafters, and the person who'd lived there before us had committed suicide by hanging themselves in the garage. And Kirsty actually ended up, they did this sage burning thing in the garage, and actually got a psychic round as well, who basically said that the person was very sad, but he specifically didn't like, and like looking back it feels almost like distasteful, but of course I didn't do it on purpose, but he really didn't like my Halloween decorations, which were some severed heads that, whilst it wasn't Halloween, I just kept hanging from the rafters. How
dare you.
And apparently he really didn't like that.
Mocking him.
Well, maybe that's how I felt, yeah.
Which I was like, how the friggin' hell would you have known?
Well, I didn't. And I would have certainly not done that. Like, it would have felt disrespectful.
100%.
But yeah, apparently he didn't like those. But I think after the experience Kirsty had of feeling that overwhelming sadness, and then like a few hauntings we've heard of, and even perhaps some things we've experienced, it seemed almost once you noticed, it happened more and more and more, and it was getting more and more extreme, like with the unplugging of the car charger and so on. And then just before we moved out, it was almost like we made peace with the guy. And Kirsty sent me a picture of our washing machine that was under the counter in our kitchen, and it was entirely out. And it had not been on, by the way, so it had not vibrated out.
Oh,
not that it had ever done that anyway, but it was just entirely pulled out, and it was almost like, I've got used to you and I like you now, and you've took those bloody severed heads down. I don't want you to go. And yeah, that's how I always took it anyway.
That just gave me chills everywhere. I've just gone goosey all over my head and everything. That is freaky. I don't think I remember you telling me that about the washing machine.
No, maybe I didn't. But yeah, I'll have a picture of it somewhere still. But it was entirely out, like.
And I think
really
what you've just said there about like how the activity sort of increases. That is, we said this in the last episode anyway, like how common that is. because the whole thing at Ivy House.
Yeah.
And James said how it just started small. Things being out of place. Easy things to sort of just take that it was just a slip of the mind or whatever. Trick of the eye. Neighbours making the sounds. It always starts really sort of almost pedestrian, doesn't it? Just stuff that you hear all the time. But then it just sort of builds and builds and builds. And, I've had experiences of that where, it'll be something we'll talk about in a future episode. But some of the things I've experienced where it's just been little things, but then it's almost like it wants to get your attention. It's it's almost like as if a ghost or a spirit or whatever is saying, you can hear me or what, but you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
You're just taking it that it's something else when it's not. So I need to do more, and it's like it siphons off more of your energy.
Yeah.
To do more, and sometimes I think siphoning off that energy from you puts you into that emotional state. Where, like Kirsty, for example,
you're more perceptive as well.
Yeah, that's it. The more she was susceptible to the comings and the goings on of what was happening, and it was almost like it was making her weaker emotionally.
Yeah,
almost. I don't know if such a thing. I don't know if such a phenomenon
I don't know if it seemed to me like she'd almost picked up on the energy of the poor guy.
Yeah.
In the state he was in,
and it was kind of like
he sadly committed suicide, and it's almost like she picked up on those extreme emotions, because it was odd, because as soon as she come out of the garage, she sort of felt okay again, a bit drained, but she felt all right. Whereas inside the garage, she was sobbing.
And we said about that in the last episode as well, about Ivy House, is that we've talked about these, we've talked about them, but we also did sort of speak about them in that episode. But houses that, and they're not just haunted, but it's almost like they're an entity within themselves, where they're able to. They house that energy, and it's almost like it needs it.
Yeah.
It sort of feeds on it, and what you said there, it's almost like she was taking on his emotions, almost like it wants to sort of keep it going. Or I don't know if that's really what he or it or whatever wanted, but it's almost like it just can't help but repeat itself. And we do have another case of that we'll talk about in another episode. Again, there's loads of things we want to talk about, subjects and stuff, but that you'll know what I'm talking about. Our listeners will, but what happened with Charlotte that she reported that time. And that's another instance of it where it's just like it just sort of keeps happening. Yeah. And I think that I'm really fascinated by the prospect of that. I think that whole thing is fascinating. And
I think it's really interesting, this idea that when noticed, it starts to get more and more and more extreme. And for our sort of listeners' benefit, me, Brett, some of our other friends started semi-regularly going on these organised ghost hunts, didn't we, at various places. And I was getting to the point of being more sceptical than I've ever been about ghosts and hauntings, because I was going on these things, really enjoying them, really atmospheric places that you go to, but nothing was happening to me. I know some things happened even to you guys, where remember there was that time your coat got sort of pulled on,
terrifying.
And it's a weird thing, because although I absolutely was not doubting that had happened to you, it didn't happen to me, so I didn't feel it.
Yeah.
And I was growing sceptical. I would never have stopped doing these things because I enjoy them regardless, but I was growing sceptical. And then even when things did happen, I found it quite easy to put it down to an explanation. So I remember one of the times at Ripon Workhouse, when we were in the master's kind of room, I really did get a strong smell of cigar smoke or pipe smoke, and the master used to smoke cigars. But then you think, was that the power of suggestion? Was there an old cigar box on the, because it's still decorated sort of how it would have been, was there an old cigar box that I just got a whiff of? So you put it down to that. The other things have come from those spirit boxes. But I felt that time in the attic at Thorn Workhouse, that spirit box went from throwing out a few random words that could be connected, could be quite
open to
spooky, but open to suggestion.
Yeah.
But then when our friend started to get really freaked out in there, it's almost like that then the spirit box became really aggressive. And again, we touched on it on the last episode, but it did, it started to actually get aggressive.
Yeah, it did.
And that was...
And our friend, she just got more and more upset as well.
And she had to leave.
And that was
and then our other friend, quite rightly said, she looked at me and she said, I've not seen you look freaked out like that. And I was. It was creepy.
Well, I remember just turning and looking at you, and I think my words were, "What the fuck is happening?"
Yeah, and it almost seemed like it was getting out of control, and then it stopped.
Yeah, dead.
But then the thing that sort of dragged me around to sort of being a believer again was at Ripon Workhouse again. Sadly, that was one you couldn't make it to. But that exact thing just started to get more and more and more happening. So it started off, we were sat around a table, basically all joined hands, huge table. And it started off with little bangs in the furniture behind you and creaks and things like that. It's an old building, you didn't think too much of it. Then the temperature plummeted. Again, it was January, it was cold. You didn't think too much of it, even when you started seeing your breath and you looked like you were in The Exorcist. But then it was more and more, the bangs got louder, things started to rattle and move, and then the climax was the table lifted off the floor and slammed back down. And everybody's hands was on the table, everybody could see each other. And that felt like, similar to the spirit box at the Thorn Workhouse, it felt like this is almost getting beyond our control, and it's quite scary.
It's like the energy spikes, isn't it?
It was, and I didn't know where it was going to end, because this table was huge, and it would have taken a lot of energy for any person to do that, never mind any spirit. It was kind of ruined by one of the organisers coming in, switching the lights on and saying, "Shall we go for a tea break?"
So go and have a brew then.
Yeah.
Just contacting the dead here, mate. Can you just give us another 5?
And that brought it to an end, sadly. When we went back in later to the same room, it wasn't nearly as cold, and absolutely nothing happened. But what I did do was see if there was any way someone could have lifted the table with their legs, whatever. And you'll have to take my word for it, but there wasn't any way whatsoever that could have happened. Even two people physically, which we did, physically making an effort to lift the table in the way it lifted, we couldn't do it. So I that pushed me back towards being a believer, really.
I think this is the thing that you got to remember as well. I mean, anyone that, we're saying like we've got loads of first-hand experience of this, and if anyone else feels differently about this, then by all means, you share your experiences. But from the bits and pieces that I can say I've experienced that I can't explain, these things don't happen all the time either, though. And I think when you go on a ghost hunt or whatever you want to call them, like we have been, because you're going on an organised thing like that, you think, well, we're going to a really haunted place. Something's bound to happen,
Yeah.
But then when it's done, it's obviously very deflating, and you sort of think to yourself, oh, well, that's a bit anticlimactic. I've waited all this time and I paid that money and travelled all this way, and nothing happened. But I think it's often the case that these things happen more either when you're not expecting it or you're not looking for it. But also, if they do happen, they happen so far apart and so randomly. I think if there was a way to plan these sorts of things to happen, we'd have more understanding about the paranormal and what happens to life after death. But the fact that it can't be...
you could measure the things somehow. And
that's it. We'd have controlled environments for measuring this kind of activity. But that's why it's still so unknown, is because we don't know how to measure it. It's why so many people don't believe, because it just happens randomly, and it can... Because you can't say, oh, we'll do that again, and then have it do it again. People just turn around and go, well, it was probably just fuck all.
Yeah.
It's because there's just no way to measure it. And I think, again, from my experience, is that it just doesn't happen all that often.
No, it doesn't. And I see it slightly different to what you said, because although really the thing at Ripon was the only tangible thing that's happened to me that I can't explain, but I've still loved all of the other ghost hunts we've gone on, and I think we all of us agree as a group, when you do the Ripon one, it includes the workhouse and the old Ripon jail, and a jail somewhere you would think, if anywhere, probably would be one of those places that would be haunted.
Yeah, because
none of us have ever picked anything up there in any way. But it's still a really cool building to be in on a night and doing these things. So I would definitely recommend it to anybody.
Oh yeah, definitely. If you can go on any one of those, then do it. Yeah, I mean the Ripon one was a good one, and I have enjoyed it. And I won't say that I've not enjoyed it because nothing's happened. It's just that it's almost like you go on. Well, maybe I do, because I'm just ridiculously idiotic in thinking this, but it's almost like I want a ghost to appear. I want a full-fledged apparition to appear, and even if it punched me in the face, I'd be happy. But it's just, I think when you go on a ghost hunt, you're like, oh well, I'm probably going to have some activity tonight.
Yeah.
And then when you get nothing really, I'm not saying that they're still not fun to do, because these places are just creepy, and there is often a vibe in them that is enough to sort of get your adrenaline going. But I certainly do anyway. I have this expectation of something freaky is probably going to happen tonight, and then when it doesn't, it's always like, shit, I really want something creepy to happen.
How are we doing for time? Not bad, are we?
We could probably squeeze one more in.
I just wanted to say, just on the ghost hunt thing, obviously I think the first one we did was Pendle, wasn't it? Now, nothing particularly ghostly happened to any of us, I don't think, but me and you, thanks to your dodgy bowels, ended up separated from the group, didn't we? And we ended up wandering around Pendle Village looking for everybody who was table tipping somewhere.
Oh my god, and that was creepy.
But what a weird place, wasn't it? Yeah. Really atmospheric, really strange place.
Yeah.
But what was really quite freaky, I thought, so we were based at a pub, I can't remember the name of it.
No, I can't.
So we were based at a pub, and at the back of the pub there was sort of outbuilding that had been made into hotel rooms.
Yeah.
And the organisers had told us that, but they wouldn't seem to go into too much detail, but apparently there was a bit of a randy ghost in one of them.
Yeah, there was a bit of a frisky spirit in
there.
Yeah,
but they didn't seem to want to go into very much detail. We didn't look at the buildings.
Well, they wouldn't share the stories, would they? They said that they
really
had stories, but they wouldn't tell us.
Which I thought was a bit odd.
Just tell us then. If you're not going to tell us, why bring it up?
Yeah, but I thought it was really creepy what you saw in those buildings.
Weird.
That made me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, well, because I got separated, hadn't I? And because I'd gone back to the pub to use the facilities, because all of a sudden I didn't feel very well at all. And I thought, well, I'll just wait for the group to come back, because the pub was like the base. And I thought, well, I'll just wait. But I felt a bit awkward sitting in the pub, because the pub was closed at this point, and it was very much a locals pub.
Yeah, it was,
I mean, it's in the middle of nowhere, and if you're not from there, everyone's looking at you. I almost felt like I was the ghost. So I kind of thought, I'm just going to go sit in the car. So I sat in the car and I had the doors open. And I could hear all this commotion coming from those little outhousey buildings which have been turned into apartments, rented sort of hotel room type things. the kind that you get in like in America, in
like a
those,
motel,
like roadside motel type things, and I was just like, what is going on? And I remember I had reversed into the bay, for the parking bay, so I was actually facing it, so I was like looking at it, at the rooms, and I was just like watching, and all of a sudden like the door opened, and this person like came out, and then went to the next one and was looking in the window, but they had like this mask on, and it was just all like an all white mask, and was like looking through the window of the next room, but then went back to their room, but instead of just going back in, because they'd left the door open, they went and was looking through their window into the apartment. And it was really weird, because I was just like, well, why are you looking in your own window?
Yeah.
And so at that point, I wasn't sure if they were looking at their own reflection, because it was dark, but there was like enough of a light that it was creating a reflection. But then I could hear some like sort of screaming. So then they went back into their hotel room and slammed the door. But then they opened it again and then went into the next room, but like actually just helped themselves and went in and just shut the door. And then a few minutes later, they opened it again and they were literally just stood in the doorway, just looking into the car park. And I was just like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
But like, I could just hear like shouting and screaming, and at one minute it sounded like laughter and playfulness, but then the next minute it was screamings. But I was like, but it didn't sound like playful screaming, because I know it might be thinking, oh, well, they're wearing masks, they're just being stupid and they're sort of scaring each other, but it didn't sound like playful screaming. And I don't know, I just got a really bad vibe about it, and I started feeling really uncomfortable about sitting in the car. And actually I was saved by my bad bowels, because I had to go back into the pub to go and relieve myself again. So I was kind of glad that I did, because I was just like, I feel like, because when they were just stood in the doorway looking out into the car park, because they were wearing this mask, I couldn't really tell if they were like looking towards the car or not. And because I had the car door open, it would have made sense that they were looking at me, because they were like, they'd be looking at the car going, that car door's open, so someone must be there. And I just really didn't feel right. So I was like, I think I'm just going to go actually soil myself for real and go do it in the pub. And then I went back into the toilet, and then that's actually when you came back looking for me.
Yeah.
And then that's when we got separated.
Oh, there was nothing ghostly in the toilets, but it was certainly horrific.
Oh, it was horrific, yeah. But it certainly felt demonic.
Strange story though, that.
Yeah, and it just didn't feel right. Like there was just I think I would be able to tell the difference. You know, I know what people might think. Well, yeah, but your senses were just heightened and you made it feel creepy because you was in Pendle.
Yeah.
You know, so you're automatically going to think that kind of behaviour is going to be weird and creepy. But it didn't feel like it was just that. Like, you know, I think I'd be able to have tell the difference between people who were maybe just a little bit inebriated, messing around, than that of the behaviour that I actually saw.
And even still, it's weird behaviour even if you're drunk. You know.
That's it. Because of the way that they want, like, you know, like when I said about how they were looking in the window, it didn't look like they were looking at the reflection either. They were stood too close to the window. Like it was as if they were actually peering in.
If you're just looking at your reflection, use a mirror in your room or your own window. You won't go to the next door room in case somebody was in there. Like,
but the room, both rooms were in darkness as well, though. Like the room that he
that's also really weird.
The room that he initially came out of looked like it had a TV on in there because it was sort of like illuminated with, and it would shift every now and then. So I was guessing that was maybe the TV. But the room the other room he went into, which I believe was one of the ones where they said that's where the frisky ghost was. When he just came out and he was just...
Did you only see one person? Just a masked person?
Yeah.
No, nobody else?
No, nobody else. But I heard people.
Yeah.
And there was literally... He came out and he was just stood in the doorway. And I was like pretty sure he was looking at me. And that's all of a sudden when my bowels...
I know you said, hey, were you confident it was a man or could it have been a woman?
No, I mean, I guess really...
It doesn't make any difference, but I just wondered.
I guess maybe I'm using the term he as a collective he. It, they, whatever. was just stood in the doorway. The build kind of looked like male. I couldn't be sure though.
Yeah.
But it was dark though. I mean, it was dark in that car park, and I didn't particularly like sitting in my car anywhere.
Yeah.
I didn't, but I didn't really feel comfortable sitting in the pub. Yeah. I just felt like everyone was looking at me, so I was just like, well, I'm going to go sit in my car.
And it's weird,
and I needed
because
some air anyway.
when we finally left, because you said that story, we were sort of hyper vigilant about those rooms, and it didn't seem like anything at all was going on. No TV,
No,
just
it was
completely,
just completely darkness,
wasn't
and
it?
it was silent as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it was early hours when we left, but like it was just completely as if everyone had just gone to bed.
Yeah, I found that again, not necessarily paranormal, just really strange stories, and those are good from listeners as well. Just those uncanny, just creepy
stories.
things that don't make you feel very good, or
things that you can't really make sense of.
Yeah.
I mean that's the thing. Well, we say, don't we? Beyond the Veil is the paranormal, supernatural, the unexplained.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of falls under that category. It's like,
Yeah.
if you can't explain what it was, well, tell us, and we'll maybe have a think about it. But sometimes an outside look at it, so to speak, can give you a couple of ideas if you can articulate the events the best you can. But yeah, if it was just creepy and you can't really explain it, well, just tell us and we'll tell you what we think. We might just turn around and go, yeah, that's creepy. We agree with you. Don't know what that was all about. Probably the vast majority of the time that will be the answer.
Yeah.
But I think something like that, it could just be the bizarre behaviour of a group of people who have got away for a bit of a break, and they were just messing around with Halloween masks on in a creepy village.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it was just the movements of it, just the fact that came out the door, went there, looked through the window, came back, looked through his own window, went back in his thingy, slammed the door, heard a load of shouting, came back out, went into the next room, helped himself, just went straight in, and then came out and just stood in the doorway. And then by the time we next went out, everything was off. All the doors were closed.
Yeah.
Just bizarre.
But that's it. It's just strange, isn't it? There might be an explanation, but we don't know what it is.
I wouldn't even like to hazard a guess.
No.
So.
Yeah, strange one. And yeah, just to remind our listeners, we really do want to build this around listener stories. We'll try and stick to themes, but we would really love to hear any sort of stories. And I've seen a couple of comments on Facebook saying that people will share the stories, but I had one that saying, you wouldn't believe what happened to me. You'd have had to have been there. But we want to hear this sort of stuff, and we would absolutely respect your anonymity if that's what you would prefer.
Yep.
But we would love to just hear these stories, and that's what this podcast is really about. Is we said it in the first episode. I'll say it again. We just love that night we had when we was away, sitting around telling creepy stories, whether they were urban legend, true experiences that people had, or whatever. We just love that feeling of something that's probably been done for as long as humanity's existed, of sitting around and telling creepy stories.
Yeah. And that's what we want you to experience by listening to us, is that you can get that feeling again as well. Is like just to listen to a scary story. We don't know if it's true. We don't know if it's not. We can't prove if it is. We can't prove if it's not. We'll tell you what we think, but you can ultimately decide what you think when you hear it. You know, and you can either agree with us or not. These are stories for you to enjoy and for you to indulge, and you can share your stories if you've got them. And we're not here to judge whether or not we believe it or not. We just want to hear it. Of course, we'll share our thoughts, but we're not here to judge anybody. We're not gonna say that we thought the story was nonsense or anything. We will believe anyone that believes that happened to them.
Yeah.
We'll believe you if you believe it happened to you, and we just want to share those stories and let other people enjoy those stories too. And that's what we want from this podcast, and we want to sort of build that sense of community around it. So we hope you've enjoyed tonight's episode with numerous stories of what we hope or feel is to be true or know to be true, and those which are clearly urban legend, and those that are deemed as folklore. That's what all what this podcast is about. So there we have it. And Halloween is indeed upon us, and this is when the veil is at its thinnest. So we know that there are more stories out there, and if you do have one, whether, like I just said, paranormal, supernatural, or unexplained, nobody will believe. You can share your story with us by either messaging us on Facebook or Instagram. You can find us on Instagram at beyond.the.veil.podcast. I'm going to have to try and rename that because it's ridiculous to read out. You can also email us at beyondveilinvestigations@gmail.com. But also, don't forget, you can listen to us on Spotify, YouTube, and on Apple Podcasts, whichever's easiest. So obviously, if you've got friends and family you want to share this podcast with, however they're getting their podcasts, they're the three channels that we broadcast over. So that's Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. So I think that's it, Lee.
Yeah, I'd like to sort of close with as well. I think when you're interested in these sort of paranormal type stories, it's always surprising how many other people are as well. You see that every social media post, you get people, like I said to you just today, Brett, I've had people commenting who I wouldn't ever particularly think would be into this sort of thing.
Yeah.
But almost everyone is when you really get down to it. So even if you've got a story from a relative or a friend that you think might be interesting for the podcast, please send it in. We're just starting out, and that's why sometimes we're having to touch on stories that are not our own or urban legends, but we really would like to build this into listeners' true stories.
Yeah.
And the great thing about those stories is, even if you're completely a skeptic, much like me going to the haunted ghost hunt evenings and being skeptical, I still really enjoy them. And the most skeptical people, not that we're looking for fiction, but skeptical people enjoy horror movies because humans enjoy the feeling of being scared but being safe, and that's what these stories do. So we really would like to hear any sort of stories that you've got that are just paranormal, just creepy. Brett's story about the rat is one of the creepiest stories I've ever heard, and it's nothing really to do with the paranormal.
No, not at all, although it certainly felt it at the time. But your stories don't have to be long. They don't have to be like short stories, like a novel type thing. They can literally be just a small event. Like, one day I was just simply in the kitchen and a glass fell off the wet counter and splashed into a million pieces, and I don't know how it happened. It can literally be just something like that. But your story like that could be one of a lot of other stories that people have got like that. Just little things that they just can't explain. And your story will be, a part of a collection of stories just like that. And, because the paranormal doesn't always, like we just said earlier, the paranormal doesn't always come in these massive events. They're just these little things that you just can't explain. And if you've experienced something like that, you'll probably find there'll be a lot of other people that have experienced the same thing. And we can tell your story with a lot of other stories, and you'll probably see a common theme running throughout. And that's another thing we want to do, is just sort of connect those dots and just understand the types of things people experience almost regularly when you actually put it all together. So, but yeah, we really do urge you to share your stories if you've got one, because that's what this podcast is going to be built on, and we'd love you to be a part of it. But as for this episode, that's it. And until the next time, it's goodbye from Lee.
Goodbye.
And goodbye from me. And you've heard the tales, you've felt the chill, but there's always another story waiting to be told. And until next time, when we take another look beyond the veil.